OBS. Here we go. All right. Um, hello everyone, and welcome to this clinic on now recording. Yeah, our buddy Craig. Um, this clinic on instructing basics. My name is Felix, and I'm a leader instructor with Crystal Pirates. I have been instructing since 2022, which is when I started playing Star Stable. Shortly after I started playing Star Stable, the club I was in, they're like, "Hey, do you want to instruct dressage?" And I was like, "Sure." I've just started learning, but I'll instruct, why not? And then I started teaching myself off of SSD. And this is back when the dictionary did not have the moving diagram. So I was like trying to parse the definitions and figure out what they were actually saying. Those were good times. Okay. So this clinic is going to focus on the fundamentals, but so like the very basics. So I tried to gear it towards like maybe you've never instructed before or you are just starting to instruct, kind of like the basic things you need to know when you just begin your instructing journey. Chat commanding, interesting. And then, of course, you can build these skills over time. Like with most things, instructing dressage, the more you do it, the better you get. So I highly recommend don't compare your instructing skills to other people who have been instructing for a very long time, or potentially they have had more opportunities to instruct, or they have skills that they're pulling from other things in their lives. For example, if they were a coach, like I coached soccer for a very long time, and I bring some of those skills to instructing dressage. Another thing is that they're very comfortable with public speaking. So if they've had to do a job where they need to speak in front of people, like I'm a TA right now, so I have to teach classes of like 200, 300, 400 people sometimes. So that skill as well can translate into being comfortable with talking to people, even though they can't see your face, they're still hearing your voice. So if you have like some public speaking opportunities, that can help you be a better instructor as well. But again, don't beat yourself up. Your skills improve over time. What I recommend is you recommend yourself, to your past self. So what you could do is like uh, the first couple lessons that you teach, record yourself doing it. And then maybe there's a time where you're feeling down on yourself and you go back and listen to that first couple like practices that you instruct and you go, wow, look how much I've grown. I'm much better now at teaching comb alignment, or I sound a lot more confident when I'm talking, that sort of thing. So don't compare yourself to other instructors, compare yourself to yourself. Uh, yes, that's one of my big tips. Um, there's going to be time to ask questions at the end of the clinic, but if you have questions at any point throughout, feel free to pop them in the clinic chat. I'm going to be keeping an eye on it, not the clinic chat, the stage call chat. That's what it's called. You can put them in there. I'll keep an eye on it. But if you're like at the very end, you think of something, you can ask a question at the very end. Okay, we're gonna get started. Actually, started. Here we go. So this is kind of like a broad overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start with an overview of the arena. So how do you label different things in the arena so you can be specific when you're communicating to your riders what you want them to do? So that includes arena lines, meter lines, and arena letters. Then we're going to get into what is screen delay. How do you communicate that effectively to your riders so they understand why they need to do certain things because of screen delay? That includes gaps in alignment. We're going to look at go timing versus transitional timing, point-based riding. And then one of the second to last things is the instructing voice. So this is just kind of like the personality you build as like an instructor, your instructor persona. So kind of like if you've ever worked in customer service and you have to like put on the customer service voice when people come in like, "Hi, how can I help you today?" Kind of something similar. You have your instructing persona. This is the kind of like the cloak or the mantle that you put on when you're teaching. You're going to talk differently than if you're just talking normally with friends or family. You're going to use different phrasing, different words. You're going to emphasize different things because that helps you convey your message or the information better to your riders. And that is like your instructing voice as a whole. And then at the end, I just have a slide with like some of the questions you guys asked when I posted that the clinic was happening. And I'm just going to kind of discuss that so that those questions are, let's see if I remember them off the top of my head, kind of general stuff around lesson planning and also how to keep your riders engaged. So we'll briefly discuss that at the end too. I didn't want to like go more into depth because I was afraid we'd be here for like 2 hours. So there's going to be a little bit at the end for those of you that can stay awake that long. Okay, let's get into it. So arena overview. Um, so like I said, arena overview, starting with this is kind of where you build a common terminology or lexicon with your riders. So how you label things in the arena. So for example, if you're like, okay, everybody line up on the center line, or we are going to uh, start on the eighth line or the wide tier. If they understand what you mean by those things, it'll make your job so much easier. And if you can start with this kind of like foundational knowledge at the beginning, once you get into more complex moves and concepts like circles, slants, big shapes like eclipse, even routines, if your riders understand what you mean by these arena lines, these meter lines, the wall letters, you can more quickly communicate stuff and you don't have to get bogged down into like, for example, you had somebody join your club who has previously been in clubs where they never kind of labeled stuff like this, and you teach them that from the beginning, so then they know what you're talking about. But say you didn't, and you kind of just assume that they know what the eighth line is, for example, and you're like, yep, okay, we're going to be doing this move, and then when your front hooves hit the eighth line, you're going to turn towards A, and they don't know what the eighth line is, right? So you don't have to use these specific labels. I think these are what SSD uses, but also this is what Crystal Pirates uses. This is what I know. So the arena lines is you're just labeling the lines in the arena. So starting with your center line, I think you guys can see my pointer. Yeah. When you run from C to A, that's the center line. So C to A, C for center line. And then you have your midline, B to E, or it's a shorter word, mid, B to E, and it's a shorter line. Kind of like these are the two lines that you use the most when you're first starting dressage, and also the wall. You're trotting along the wall. And also you have your midline, your center line, you have that dark line. Very easy to identify. But you can get more granular and add more names. So on either side of your center line, you have your wide tier or your wide rein line. So that's one dotted line away from the center line. Then you have your quarter lines. You can also think of it on either side of your quarter line, between the quarter line and the wall. That's 1/4 of the arena lengthwise. And then your eighth line and 1/8 of the arena between your eighth line and the wall lengthwise. And then your wall line just goes all the way around the wall. So usually when I talk about the wall line, I'll say wall line B, wall line E, A, C, etc. Um, so those are your arena lines. Again, you don't have to use these specific names for them. These are the most commonly used ones. But if like you want to get creative and name them something themed to your club, I mean, why not? That could be fun. But just be ready for like more learning time if you have people coming in from other clubs or teams who use like the more standard names. Or if say you're trying to teach an open lesson like in your open server and you use like your custom names, people are gonna be like, what are you talking about? So I would just say maybe stick to the standard unless you're ready to teach both, like the standard names and then your fancy names to your club or team. You also have your arena letters. So these are like on the arena wall. So these are also really nice if you want to help your riders situate themselves in the arena. So for example, you could say, okay, we're going to start the line today at the quarter line P. So then your riders would know they need to come here, the quarter line in line with P, but it could be like either side. So you could get even more specific. You could say, I want you guys at the quarter line in line with P, closer to B. So you can get really specific if you're using uh, all these specific things. Ewall, Ewall, yes. What I do actually with the pirates is I say Edward Wall and Bernard Wall because B and E sound very similar. So I'll say, okay, we're going towards Edward Wall. We're going towards Bernard Wall. Yeah, C and A are quite different from each other, so you don't have much of a problem. But B and E, I do tend to give them like full names, like they're Edwardian gentlemen, or Edward, the skin of a killer Bella. Yeah. You could even call them Edward and Bella Wall. Just stick to the Twilight theme if you want. And then also too, when I'm thinking about my corners, is you have F corner, K corner, H corner, and M corner. You can also associate this with your letter die. So this is where they follow the dark die line or fire line from one corner letter. So say M, they pass through X, and then they exit at K. But I also use the corner letters when I'm taught when we get into slants because when you do slants, you end up on diagonal lines. So in order to have my writers kind of understand which direction they need to be facing, in addition to like slant math as well. So say, for example, if you are traveling towards C, you're on the center line, you're traveling towards C, and you fish left, then your riders would end up in a diagonal comb traveling towards F corner. So this can be another way to kind of help them understand which direction they need to be facing when you're calling moves. Especially if you're doing a lot of slant moves in a row, you can say, okay, you're going this way, you're facing this corner, then you know another slant move that way, you're facing this corner or this wall, all that kind of fun stuff. Another good thing too is if you clearly label all your arena lines like this, the more knowledge you give your riders about the arena, the more comfortable they are to try new things. So say, for example, you only ever use the center line and the midline, and you want them to get off those lines. That is scary because they've never been off those lines, especially like if you want them to be more comfortable to do routines, for example. So what I highly encourage is when you first teach them the arena lines, have your line lead take a line that's not the center line. So say they're trotting along the wall, do. You're like, okay, line lead, please cut down a wide tier of your choice. And wide tier, do. Now they're not on the center line. Exciting. Wow. Say for example, they're doing a little comb. They start on Edward, they're combing towards Bernard, and you're challenging them a little, and you say, okay, I want you guys to cut back towards C at the far eighth line. So now they need to think about their arena lines and go, okay, the eighth line is going to be before the wall. So at the eighth line, I'm going to cut back towards my lead towards C. So you can challenge them a little by having them think about the arena lines. And this way, if they're comfortable with the arena lines before you get into harder stuff like circles and slants and big meter shapes or even routine choreography, that when you teach them that stuff, it's less scary because they have this knowledge already of what the arena, how it's labeled, you know? Yeah, so that's the fun of that. Okay, those are arena lines. Next thing is meter lines. So now you're giving them even more information. So this kind of works similar to how the center line, your lines are mirrored on either side. So you have wide tier closer to B, to Bernard, wide tier closer to E, to Edward. So I usually call them like wide tier Bernard, wide tier Edward, quarter line Bernard, just to differentiate. So same thing here with your meter lines, starting from X, which is the exact center of the arena, or your midline, B to E, or Bernard to Edward. As you go out one dotted line, you're adding 5 meters. So you have your 5 meter line, your 10, your 15, 20, etc., etc., etc. So I would say, for example, I would call this 5 meter C. So this just means that this 5 meter line is closest to C. Or 25 meter line A, this 25 meter line is closer to A. This is essential too when you start doing circles, because with circles, you're not working with your regular arena lines, you're working with meters, or that's kind of like the standard ways to think of them in meters. So you really want them to kind of understand what this means. So say, for example, you want them doing a 20-meter circle. The 20-meter points are here, and then they would be on the wall here and here. So again, diagrams are great. This too, you can combine your wall letters. So the 20-meter circle is often very difficult for people to understand where they need to go, especially on the center line. Because the midline is easy, B and E, you're just next to the wall. But on your center line, it can get very confusing. So what I say too is you're going to be aiming for the dot that's in between your wall letters. So in between P and F, if you're traveling counterclockwise, left leg in, you're going to look to take the dot in between P and F. You cross Bernard dot, and then you're taking the dot here in between H and S. Keep going, Edward dot. Again, you're looking for the dot in between P and F. And then your 15 too can be confusing. So then you just look for, I want to find P. Then I'm crossing the dot before B. And then I'm looking for S. And then crossing the dot before E. So again, because you have more information to give your riders, you have your wall letters in combination with your meter lines, it allows you to give them more information. Two, when you're taking circles or shapes off of X, say we take X here, we're going to put it here. X is going to be here. So this is the quarter line. You could say it's between M and R, right here, or it's in line with the 20-meter line, closer to C. So that's the new origin point of your circle. And then from here, say you're doing a 5-meter circle, you would say just count out one dot on either side of that new X. And then that's where you're making a little 5-meter circle around. So you're just giving them more information about where they need to be. Again, this also gets really useful when you get into routines. Of course, you would, well, I shouldn't say of course. Hopefully you have time to draw diagrams for your riders. But if you don't, in your commanding notes, you could write like, hey, for example, this rider, what's the silly name I could say? This rider, Bubblegum, they need to start at this spot. This is their starting spot in the arena. And you could give them like an example, like in your notes, they're going to be on this arena line, this meter line combination. You show them where it is, and then they can write in their notes kind of like how they like to label that. But yeah, the more information they have, it's easier for them to kind of orient themselves in the arena. And it's easier for you to explain things if you have a common language with each other. So that's meter lines. Yeah, okay. Making sure I said all my notes. All right. So one way that you can kind of get your riders used to arena lines and meter lines is you use the arena line game. Just have everybody start on X. and then you call out an arena line or a meter line, and they run over to it. The last person to halt completely is out for that round. I suggest doing like a practice round first, just so they get an idea of how the game works. And then if your Pookies are really killing it, like you can't get anybody out, you can get more specific. So you can say, oh, you're going to move to the 30-meter line closer to C. You're going to move to the wide tier closer to Bernard. And then they really have to think about, okay, where am I in the arena? Do I need to go to this side, that side, all that fun stuff. And then you can play with just arena lines. So I would say like do that with your beginner Pookies who are just kind of new to the concept. And then once they're kind of strong with the arena lines, they really understand them, then you can add in the meter lines or just play with the meter lines, or you can do both, make it more challenging. So that's an example of how you can play with that. The arena line game. Okay, next thing. I'll make sure I'm yapping fast enough. All right, screen delay. I think most of you understand what screen delay is, but just a brief overview. Screen delay is like a symptom or an artifact of how SSO works with communicating information from all the players that are on the server. So whenever you're tippy tapping your keys, that information gets sent to SSO server, and then SSO then sends that information to the other players. So like for example, this is you, this little turquoise and peach laptop, and these are the other players down here. At the same time that your tippy tapping of the keys is going to the SSO servers and being sent to the other players, the same thing is happening to them. So as they're tippy tapping their keys, that goes to the SSO servers, and then SSO kind of sends it as a kind of bundle of information all together to you. So this is why if you're doing dressage and you're trying to time your movement to the other riders on screen so you all look in sync to you, you're actually going to look behind everybody on your instructor screen. Because what's fun about being an instructor is you're outside of the screen delay bubble. You don't see everybody's screen delay. You're outside of the bubble of what is happening. You're kind of just you're getting this information. All the little tippy tapping of the keys is being sent to you as the instructor. So you see everybody kind of moving as they are, just slightly delayed because the server is sending that information to you. So that's why it's important to go on Go. I'm sure you guys have had this experience where you're really emphasizing when you hear that G sound in Go, you need to tap the key. Otherwise, you're going to be behind. And then another way I like to illustrate this is if your riders do champs and you're like, I'm in front. Why does it say this other person's in first place? I'm obviously in front of them. This isn't fair. SSO, fix your game. It's because of screen delay. And also too, when you're riding a champ, you're probably going as fast as you can. The faster you're moving, the more pronounced screen delay is. So we'll talk about this too when we get into alignment. But this is why it's important to communicate this concept to your riders so they understand why they need to go on Go and not wait and try to time their moves to the riders around them. If they're really having a hard trouble understanding this, you can share your screen and show them what it looks like when they're trying to time their move to the riders around them. And you can show them, hey, you're behind. And then have them go on Go and they can see, I'm actually in time with everybody now. This is great. I'm going to go on Go. If they're still like not really getting it, maybe you're not communicating in a way that they understand. Have them share their screen and you can watch as they're going. Yeah, usually they kind of understand if you just screen share yours, but sometimes you do have to have them share their screen so you can kind of like dissect what's going on a little bit more. Uh, yes, and then you can also, this is a fun way to really show them screen delay is screen share from the fourth camera angle, like the top-down view. And then all your riders should hide their SSO screen and they should just ride based on the top-down angle. So the top-down angle is not going to have screen delay, right? Because it's your point of view as the instructor, you're outside of the screen bubble, the screen delay bubble. So they're going to be seeing these things as you see them. So they really need to go on Go, otherwise they're going to be out of sync with everybody else. So that's kind of another way of illustrating screen delay and how you view things outside of the screen delay bubble because you're not in it with them, you're not riding in line with them or in the arena with them. Yeah, so that's screen delay. Okay, gaps. Oh, these photos are so grainy. Wow, beautiful. This is me and Otto testing gaps or getting photos, I guess. Um, gap sizes are used to indicate how close you want your riders to be with the rider in front of them. Most common ones are back of saddle, NTT one horse. So this is kind of like if you have a medium sized horse, it's kind of like the standard. But if you have a really small horse like a pony or a really big boy like a Shire who has they're like a big truck, you might need to slightly adjust your gap sizes. You might need to test them out. But generally, back of saddle, your horse's nose touching the back saddle of the horse in front of you, or you can also think of it as your front hooves are inside their back hooves. And then nose to tail, your horse's nose is touching the tail of the horse in front of you. And then one horse, you can imagine a horse in between you or a chunky Jorvik pony. Is the audio cutting out? Is the audio? Oh, it's Otto. You're saying Otto, Wilma. I was like, who? The audio. Okay, it is audio. Yes. Um, One horse is you're imagining a chunky pony or a horse length in between you. Another way you can gauge this is as their front hooves are on the dot in front of you, your front hooves are on the dot behind them. And what's fun about gaps is that at the halt, there is no screen delay. So what you can do to illustrate what the gaps look like from your perspective, because as an instructor, they're not going to be the same because you're outside the screen delay bubble. You can have your riders working in their gaps, boss and TT, one horse, have them do a halt, but don't let them walk because that will get rid of the gap. So you're going to do a halt set on go, immediate halt set, so they don't slow to the walk on pre. On go, they're going to tap their keys down, whether it's from a trot, a walk, a canter, extended canter, as many times as they need to come to a complete halt. And if they all halted nicely, the gaps they are in at the halt is the gaps you see while they're moving. So this is another fun way to illustrate screen delay is to, at the halt, they can see what the gaps actually look like for you. And you can also like take photos or recordings and kind of show them, even though on your screen you're a boss with the person in front of you, on my screen there's about this much room, a little bit less, like a half horse. So yeah, that's kind of the fun of gaps and screen delay again. And then the fun thing with gaps, I remember when I was first learning dressage, I would be doing boss with the person in front of me, but I would look behind me and I'd be like, the person behind me is way behind me. What is going on? They're really, really way behind me. But again, that's screen delay at work. You know, the joys of screen delay. It's like they're not doing boss right. Person behind me, yeah. Oh man. Anyways, that's gaps. Again, if a rider is really struggling with understanding gaps, you can share your point of view. You can ride in the line and have them watch you doing the proper gap. Hopefully that helps them understand, oh, I really do need to have my horse's nose on the booty of the horse in front of me if I'm doing boss, or I need to be sniffing the tailbow of the horse in front of me if we're doing NTT. But if they're still really not understanding, again, have them screen share their own screen and you can kind of look at, oh, they're not really understanding what boss or NTT is. Sometimes though, it's they have like unique lag or Wi-Fi issues and you might need to work with them to find custom gaps, which can be interesting. So sometimes that's the thing. Um, yeah, yes. All right, keep going. Alignment. So, alignment is another fun kind of illustration of screen delay, and it shows that as you're moving faster, screen delay becomes more obvious or more pronounced. So we can see this with alignment in a comb, and alignment in a comb, so riding straight side by side in a straight line, is the same in a slant, is the same in a circle. So even if you're moving in a slanted line, your alignment remains the same. If you're moving in a circle, your alignment remains the same because the gates are the same. Um, I do explain this more in like specific circle and slant lessons, but I'm not going to do that today for the sake of time. Okay, so a walk comb with our beautiful grainy photo here of me and Otto. At the walk with a medium-sized horse, you want your back hooves in line with your lead or anchor's front hooves. Or you can also look at your arena lines if you like the super zoomed out view. You can kind of just look as my back hooves are on an arena line, my lead's front hooves are on that same arena line. Or you can turn your camera like completely sideways and like look as I'm moving, are my hooves lined up with theirs? And then you just want to make sure and turn your camera back to make sure you're not playing bumper cars with the people on the other side of you. You're still on your nice straight line as you're coming across. Trot is your tail is in front of their nose. So you can look at as your tail's on arena line, their nose is just reaching it. Canter is one horse length ahead. You can also do as your front hooves are on arena line, their front hooves are on the arena line just behind you. Here I was being a boogie. I'm a little too far ahead of Otto. But their front hooves are on the arena line just behind you. And you can see there's kind of like the space for one horse in between us. Like take my arrow down here, space for one horse. And then extended canter, the zoomies, two horse lengths. Or you could think of it like the space between two dots is like 5 meters if we're looking at the meter system, and medium-sized horses are about 2.5 meters from nose to tail. So you can think of it as the space between two dots or two horse lengths. So as your tail is passing an arena line, your anchor's nose or front hooves are just reaching the arena line or the meter line behind you at the extended canter. But also what's fun with the extended canter, because you're moving so fast, sometimes the game just goes absolutely not, and then it gets a little wonky. Uh, so depending on how like busy the server is that day, maybe there was a big update or something, sometimes the extended canter gets a little off. But this can be a fun gate to practice with your riders trying to do extended canter combs. Okay, that's alignment. So like combining these two together, your gaps and alignment, is another good way to illustrate to your riders how screen delay works, because it is very obvious in those two senses. Yeah. Okay. Go timing versus transitional timing. Um, so go timing is where your riders go on go. They're waiting to hear you say the move, set, pre, go, or and go, or whatever kind of words you use together to indicate that they're doing something. Um, when you're using like all go timing, this will be anytime there's a gate change or a direction change, a go will be called. I do recommend this for your beginner baby riders because this really makes them listen to your goes. They are locked in. They are paying attention to you. They're going on go. They're not trying to be in time with the riders on their screen. They're just really focusing on their gaps or their alignment, and they're locked in. They're waiting to hear that go. Um, and then if the goes are delayed, keep your gate and go straight. So for example, if you're doing a triple curl with three goes for each gate change, they would do their walk curl, keep the walk, go straight. They're waiting for that second go, then they trot, curl, keep the trot. Did I say keep the walk? Here's a typo I forgot. Felix, you're fired. Keep the trot and go straight. And then third go, they would do the canter curl and then return to their working gait once their saddle is straight. With a combo, for example, you're changing direction each time, so they would keep their gait go straight, and then when they hear each subsequent go, they would do the next part of the move. I think it's also good to teach them this way of doing it because sometimes in routines, maybe you're having people in all corners of the arena. It's a little chaotic. They're all doing sorts of different stuff. If you can fit in extra goes like this, your timing will be more precise because they're really waiting for that go command. Instead of them maybe doing transitional timing or point-based riding, they're really listening for the G and go, and they're going. They're doing the next part of the move. But if they're doing transitional timing, say one person is slightly off, and maybe after the first go they're slightly off and they're using transitional timing for the rest of the move, they're going to be slightly off to the other riders throughout the move. So sometimes if you notice that maybe your riders are really struggling with transitional timing, you might want to have them do go timing during the routine if there's space, if you can like yap fast enough to get all the goes in depending on what everybody else is doing. Otherwise there's transitional timing. So this is when your saddle is straight or your saddle is in a relative position to a marker that you give them, they go ahead and do the next part of the move. So for example, say they're working on the quarter line, they're going from C to A, their saddle is straight or parallel in relation to the center line and the wall. So they do that walk curl when their saddle is straight, once again parallel to the center line of the wall. They do the trot curl, saddle is straight, do the canter curl, they return to their working gait. So this too can be interesting because sometimes people interpret saddle as straight in different ways. So depending on what marker you like to use, like I know some people with like curl fates, they like to say like when you're two strides away from completing the curl, that's when you transition to the second one, for example. Um, just be really, what's the word I'm looking for? Like detailed, like when you want them to transition. So this might be another time where you share your screen, you demonstrate the move, and you kind of explain, okay, I see here my saddle is parallel or straight in relation to the wall or the midline or what have you. Now I'm going to click my key, I'm going to change direction, I'm going to change gait. Or uh, another fun thing too is when you're doing combs and you're doing different gated combs, do you gate up first or do you turn first? So that's another thing you can play with. It will give a different effect depending on what you choose, or do you gate up and turn at the same time? So there's lots of options, but just be really clear with your riders what you want because it can be frustrating. Say you're riding in line and your instructor is saying, do this, do this, do this, but maybe you're not quite understanding what they mean, or you learned a different way in a previous club or team and you don't get why it's wrong. So as an instructor, be ready to give examples, share your screen, like explain in depth if needed why you want them to do this way, like in relation to screen delay or maybe the way it looks. You want them to do it this way. Like be ready to explain, like give more information so that they really understand. Sometimes too, you might need to do a private lesson with someone if they're really, really struggling. Maybe they learned really differently in a previous club or team. Maybe they're brand new to dressage. Maybe they have like some learning challenges and you just need to find a unique way to like walk them through the concept. But that's part of instructing is you kind of have to learn like I don't want to say an infinite number of ways, but many, 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 many ways to explain things to people because everybody learns slightly differently from each other. And another thing too is as an instructor, I think like if you've ever seen those YouTube videos where it's like explain this topic to a kindergartner, a sixth grader, a 12th grader, a student in college who's majoring in the topic, and like a master's student, for example, who's this is their thesis. So as an instructor, depending on how long you've been instructing, you probably have a lot of knowledge. You deeply understand how dressage works, how screen delay works, why things are done a certain way. But if you're working with someone new to dressage or someone new to your style, like maybe your club's unique dictionary or method, you have to kind of go back to that beginner kind of mode of thinking and not assume that they have knowledge. So you need to be ready to like re-explain things in a different way or kind of like tie it into stuff that they previously know, maybe through analogies or like say they do like marching band or something like, oh, it's kind of like this movement or like say they play a sport like soccer or field hockey. Oh, it's kind of like when you're doing this sort of play or whatever. So like the more examples you can kind of like put into your library of dressage, um, the better you can be as an instructor. Okay, sorry, I kind of yapped about more than transitional and go timing. Okay, point-based writing. This is fun. Okay, this is a more advanced technique, but this is when you're getting into large shapes. So for example, once your writers are familiar, let's go back up to the meter lines. Once they really know what these are, you've gotten them used to writing in circles, you can then have them do large shapes that use the meter system. So this is an example. This is called a wave quarter half eight. You can also think of it as a wave quarter moon dodge. So this is where you could really explain like, okay, this is where your dots are going to be. You got to cross through this dot and that dot. And because your writers already know what the arena lines and the meter lines are, they understand what you mean. So for example, in this case, say you have your line of riders are traveling from A to C, and you tell them at X, you guys are going to do a wave quarter half eight. So this means your odds go left through the orange dots, your evens go right through the blue ones. And so for example, with your odds, they're going to start doing a quarter moon left. So the top of the shape, this is the wide tier E and the 5 meter line C. That's the top of their shape. They end it here. This is the midline quarter line. And then they start a quarter moon to the right. So then the top of the shape is the 8th line, E, Edward, but the 5 meter line A. And then they exit just in front of E. So if they're really comfortable with the arena line labels, the meter line labels, you could even use the wall letters depending on where you have the shape. Like say for example, we shifted this over here to like between R and S. You could use R and S as reference points instead of or Edward and Bernard. But then where they would start the shape, this is the 15-meter line. 15-meter line closest to C or the center line dot that's between R and S. This is where you start the shape. And then if they're really struggling though, you can be a cone. Like you could stand here and you could put your horse here. And then if you have like a strong rider with you who already knows all about meter shapes, they're Gucci, you could say, okay, you're gonna stand here as a cone, your horse is here as a cone. Kind of help your your newer riders or less experienced riders a little bit as they learn how to do these shapes. But again, if they're really comfortable with how you label things in the arena, you can more quickly communicate to them what they need to be doing. Also to like if you're doing routines, for example, and you want them to set up for this and this shape in a certain way, you can say, oh, you're going to be starting on this arena line and this mirror line or this wall letter, and then you're going to progress from there to like over here, what have you. So then they kind of understand what you're talking about. But again, always be ready to be a traffic cone, or if you have like alternate riders, put them in as traffic cones, kind of help your riders kind of visualize where they need to be. So that's point-based writing. So instead of like goes, you're saying when you reach this point, you are doing this. And then you can give like more advanced information. I'm not sure, I shouldn't say advanced, more detailed information. You can say when your nose reaches, when your front hooves reach, when your saddle is over, when your tail passes, for example. And then also too, you'll see that as you're doing different gaits, the faster you're moving, that it'll kind of affect the look of the move as well. So you can play with that too. But point-based writing can be really fun. Um, yep, that's that. Okay, let's keep going. All right, the instructing voice. Talked about this a little bit earlier. Um, so this is just something that you build over time. It's kind of like your instructing personality or persona. So this includes the way you call and explain moves, maybe any funny sayings or analogies you use to keep writers engaged. And then it often incorporates the styles of other instructors you've learned from. So what I highly recommend with like kind of like building up your instructing voice or kind of like becoming more comfortable is try to instruct as much as you can. So what are the possibilities for you to instruct? Like, can you do open lessons in your open server? Can you be a teacher for like a community server like TDA, or SSD or JDC, or there's a whole bunch of them now, TDN. I'm trying to think of all of them. SSCC, uh, what's the one? TDH. No, TDH doesn't exist anymore. I can't remember them all. All the abbreviations and things. But where are the chances where you can instruct and kind of build your instructing voice? The other thing too is try to go to open lessons hosted by other instructors because you can see how they teach certain things and you can kind of go, oh, like I really enjoyed the way that Bertha uh, taught how to ride big meter shapes. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed her analogies for that. I'm going to incorporate a bit of Bertha's style into when I teach meter shapes. Or Bertha uses really funny analogy for describing this move. I'm going to use that as well. So yeah, so I highly encourage going to other instructors' um, lessons and kind of seeing how they explain stuff. Like I've learned so much from going to other instructors' lessons about how they explain things, like how they kind of think about the theory or the concept, and it helps me better teach that in the future. Um, yes, so that's your instructing voice. And again, like I said at the beginning, don't compare your instructing style or your instructing personality to somebody who has instructed for a very long time or who has had more opportunities to instruct than you because they've just had more chances to practice and to build up that skill. Um, so again, it's just something that you build up over time. Compare yourself to your past self, not to others. What is that saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. Don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to your own progress over time. How have you gotten better over time? You know? And also too, there'll be times where you make mistakes. Don't get down on yourself. What I like to do is the pirates know when we're trying something really weird. Sometimes I just think of things on the spot and I go, "We're gonna try this," and it's okay if we make mistakes. And then also I'll admit when I made a mistake. Like we were doing oval pinwheels a couple weeks ago, and I was telling them the wrong points they needed to be on for the oval pinwheel. And whenever I make mistakes like that, I say, "Felix, you're fired." So also own up to when you make mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning. It's totally normal. Yeah, don't feel bad about it. It's just gonna happen. We're not perfect. We're human, all that good jazz. Okay, that's the instructing voice. Don't be too hard on yourself. You'll improve. Alrighty, so these are your questions that I mentioned earlier. So I kind of grouped them kind of together. So Kin asked, sometimes it feels like writers hear instructions but don't actively listen. They're like zombies throughout practice. So these are kind of all writer engagement on the left, how to keep writers engaged, like interested. Um, so if your writers are being like zombies during practice, one possible thing might be maybe your practice time is too late. I don't think you would do one too early, like at 6 a.m., but maybe it's too late. So maybe you have a discussion with your writers about can we maybe try to schedule things a little bit earlier so you guys are more awake? Or maybe everybody needs to eat a little snack and have some water before practice so they're ready to pay attention. Maybe they need to put their phone out of the room. Maybe they need to turn Discord pings off. You know? What are the little things that you can do to help keep your writers more focused? Part of that too is the instructing voice. Are you an engaging person to listen to? Do you make little jokes or use funny analogies or you don't leave blank spaces in between things? So one of the good things is if you're certified yapper, you probably have a good chance to be a good instructor because you just talk and you don't leave blank spaces. Like maybe you're like explaining something and they need to trot a little bit to get to like the arena line you want them to cut down. So as they're making their way downtown, maybe you tell them something funny about your day. Or maybe they're typing funny comments in the chat and you're replying to that, for example. So that too is just a skill you build over time. I remember when I first started instructing, I was so nervous. Like I would stumble over my words. Um, I would forget to call stuff because I would be so focused on one thing that I would forget to call something. So I think part of that too is just don't take it too seriously. I mean, take it seriously, but you know, again, you'll improve over time. You'll get better. Um, and then just keeping on with Kin's question. What's the best way to phrase directions or structure lessons so writers are engaged and attentive throughout practice? Um, I think a part of this is how can you keep your instructions to a certain length that you're communicating what you want them to do without spending too much time explaining. So that's kind of like if you build the foundation at the beginning, arena lines, maybe start with those. Don't give them meter lines straight away, but arena lines and wall letters. So they understand what you mean when you say cut at this spot or you're going to turn at this spot, and also to explaining screen delay, what are gaps and alignment, so that when you move on to more complicated stuff down the line, you don't have to go back and re-explain those things. They already understand those basics or those fundamentals. So how can you build like a strong structure from the beginning based on your instructing method, or your maybe your Clever Team's dictionary or method of instructing, so that as you get into more complicated stuff, you don't have to rehash those things. They already know what you're talking about, and you can get into more complicated concepts. Um, as a way to structure lessons so that people are more engaged, I think it's to like not spend too much time doing one thing. So say for example, you do want to teach a comb focused lesson, doing combs over and over and over can be really boring. So what I would say is uh, sprinkle other stuff throughout. So say for example, you're teaching combs, start them off with trot combs because that's usually what people learn first. Explain what trot comb alignment is, have them do it once or twice, and then teach something else. Like maybe you're also working on gated curls, so have them do like a star curl, and then have them trot comb again, and they do a star curl in the middle, and then they have to realign to their line lead at the in between. Um, or have them like change gates. So they're doing a little walkity walk comb from A to C and then extended counter comb. And then, oh, and then you're going to curl over. Okay, find your lead again. You got to realign to them. So, like, try to avoid doing too many things in a row that are the same. Unless it's like something really brain breaking and you do need to spend the extra time. But you can kind of see when your writers are getting a little bored. And if they are, you can maybe like pivot to like a game or like a different concept. Or sometimes you just need to end practice early because they're just not, it's too late. They got the sillies. They're not focused. Sometimes this is a good time to bring them back in attention wise and go, hey, is there like a move that you guys want to try? Or let's put together like a really weird move together. We're going to make a Franken move. So, like, you go, okay, 4 people, give me a move, and we're going to make a really weird sequence of all these moves put together using different gates, uh, different like alignment, different gaps, or whatever. We're going to make a really weird move. And then as you get them to engage with you and suggest stuff, hopefully that pulls their attention back into practice. Um, sorry, I'm going on a lot about this question. Also, too, you have to set a standard when you first begin instructing of how attentive you want your writers to be. So maybe it's like the first 5 to 10 minutes of practice, you guys just yap and chat and talk about your day. So they get that out of the way, and then 10 or 15 minutes in, they're ready to practice. If somebody's being really disruptive, do you make them go stand in the stands? You know, like you have to kind of set the boundary somewhere because if you let them run roughshod over you, they're not going to respect you and they're not going to listen. So it's kind of like a fine line of like how do you keep practice fun, but how do you also keep them like locked in and paying attention? Okay, Ariel, I'm finally getting to the next one. How would you handle a group of writers that already have a good grasp of the move, dressage games, going over gaps? Um, so I think what's helpful here, if you have writers that are like stronger, they have more experience, is I mean, I personally think I like to ride with the beginner riders because I'm instructing most of the time, so I like to be in line. But it's always good to go back to your basics or your fundamentals. So like I do know what comb alignment is, but it is nice to ride in line and practice comb alignment. Also here too, sometimes your stronger riders are used to being at the front of the line. Put them at the back of the line. You know? Don't let them always be in front. Put them at the back. So now they have to think about their gaps, their alignment. They're not always the leader. um, dressage games, we talked earlier about the arena line game, but you can also do comb games. So like I mentioned earlier, they're combing, you have them do a move in the middle. They got to realign to their line lead, or maybe just the line lead does a move and everybody has to slow down, realign, or maybe just half of your riders, maybe all your odds do one move and all your evens do the other move. They have to realign to their line lead. So kind of like challenge them to fix alignment in weird spots instead of just you're slowly moving from one wall to the next and you're just focused on alignment doing that. They're doing moves in between. Um, for gaps. So fun ways of going over gaps, you can have them work in, for example, a tier and a waterfall. So when you're in tier alignment, you're in comb alignment with your odd, if you're an even. When you're in a waterfall, you're still in your your boss or your entity or your one horse. Now you're just across from each other. So even though you're not in single file, you're still maintaining boss gaps across with the rider who is in front of you. So what you could do is you could have them switch between tier alignment to waterfall alignment to tier alignment to waterfall alignment. You can do the same thing as in the comb game. You have them do little moves in between, like maybe everybody does a dodge away from the other line. Okay, now you got to get back into tier alignment or in your NTT across alignment. Also, too, as your waterfall gets wider, if you're doing a bunch of moves like that, maybe your riders are now on the quarter line across from each other instead of being on the wide tier across from each other. So they got to get out their binoculars and really look. Am I still NTT across with the person who is in front of me? This can also set them up well for when you eventually do revolves, because when you're splitting your line at the wall to get them into on the opposite walls to then comb in for revolves, um, you want them to have good gaps because the gap size you use will affect the look of the revolve as well as the gate. So that's one way to do it. Um, Good ways of making a lesson engaging instead of just telling them to do moves they already know. Um, this is, I think, once you have a large amount of lesson plans under your belt, like you've built up a lesson plan bank, or maybe use a curriculum for your club or team. As your riders move through your lessons or your curriculum, you kind of know they all have this amount of knowledge. So you can try to challenge them with something really funky. Like one example I'm doing right now with the Pirates in our intermediate group is 5 meter slants. So instead of riding a slant as you normally would, we turn it into a 5 meter shape. So we do like 5 meter fishes and back slants and ribbons. And then they have to think about slant math because we connect two of those together. So it's like, I think it's like, how can you smash two concepts together to make it more interesting? Um, that's one way you can do it. Also, too, you can ask them what do they want to learn. And maybe it's something you don't know about, so you guys learn together. Maybe you go out and do some research and come back. Okay, this is what I discovered on. I'm trying to think of something random. How to do star pinwheels, for example. Let's look at it and try to figure it out together. Or you could, for example, like watch like uh, marching band or like synchronized swimming. Or I even saw synchronized cycling. So they're on bicycles and they're riding just on the back wheel and they're doing like synchronized movements while on bicycles. So you could like just look at anything that has movement and be like, how can I recreate this in dressage? So like challenge yourself and your riders to kind of think of dressage in like a weird way that's like not standard, for example. Um, I think Trey's question kind of applies to these two. Moves to flow across the arena. I think going back to when we were talking about arena lines and meter lines, don't be afraid to use the arena. So instead of always sticking to the wall in the center line, which I think most people do because it's like an easy reference point, it's like more comfortable, have them cut down the other arena lines, the meter lines. Work with like once you get comfortable with it, slant lines and circles and meter shapes everywhere. Um, the more that they do that, the more fun it is, more interesting. Breaks their brains a bit, but you know that's great. That's learning. That's new neural pathways being constructed. Okay, let's go over to the right side. This is more about like lesson plans. Wheel is in the chat. Wheel's question: how is an instructor able to create an effective lesson plan based on a certain topic with only a few moves and make it last the duration of practice without going too quickly or too slowly? Especially if someone is struggling with one particular move or the writers are picking up the material quicker than expected. So if you are making lesson plans, I recommend that you plan for more than you think you'll get through. So maybe like you see like over time, like, oh, if I teach like 10 moves, we usually get through the whole thing. So maybe plan for 15 or even 20. Um, if you're only doing a few moves, like maybe you really want to like hammer in a certain like class of moves. Like for example, if you're doing just keyholes, you could do use your different gates. So walk, trot, canter, extended canter, the backup. Um, so they have to think about alignment at all these different gates. Use different gaps. So your boss, your entity, your one horse. You could also get into halfway inside and fully inside. So those are more advanced gaps. kind of challenge them to think about we're doing the move, but now we're using different gates, different gaps. Um, what are moves that use keyholes? So you could do fortunes, which is a curl into a keyhole in the opposite direction. You could do like a retreat keyhole, so that would be like a curl into a keyhole the same way. I think that's called a key curl. I'm trying to combine terminology. You could do keyhole fates or locks. You could do clovers. You could do 5 meter keyholes. Um, you could make up your own sequence of moves that use keyholes or ask your riders to do that. So instead of just like trotting the entire time on the wall or on the center line, you're having them cut down the arena lines, the meter lines, maybe the letter dies. They use all different sorts of gates and gaps. Um, if someone is really struggling with one particular move, that can be really tough because then it gets boring for your other riders. So if you have someone in the group who you see like really has it down, they really understand it, you could say, hey, what's a random name? Patricia, would you take cheese into this other call and go over keyhole with them and like really explain it from your point of view how it works? Maybe that could be helpful if, for example, Patricia is comfortable taking cheese, just the two of them, to talk about keyholes. Or again, you can screen share and like show them how you think about it, analogies again. Sometimes though, like if somebody is really on the struggle bus and they're just not getting it, you might need to do a private lesson with them. It's just how it is sometimes. Um, and then you have the last little bit. If riders are picking up the material quicker than expected, this is where if your lesson plan is like longer than you would normally make it, you have that extra material to fall back on. But also too, as you become more practiced as an instructor, sometimes you can just think of stuff on the spot to kind of add in. So like say like we were doing this keyhole lesson, they were killing it, they were doing really great. And I go, okay, let's make this a little bit more interesting. Let's do keyholes on slants. Now we're thinking about slant math. Let's do keyholes all in a circle. So now you're thinking about your curved line in relation to your keyhole. Let's use keyholes to expand or shrink our circle, for example. Let's do keyholes in a tight ring. So that's buddy formation and crystal parts. So like, how can you combine all these different concepts from your clever team's method, dictionary, curriculum, and kind of like mash them together to create something new? So they're not just thinking about the move like in the most basic, like strict definition way. It's like, how can I take the move and apply it to all sorts of different things? That's my recommendation for that. Okay. Question from Cami. Is Pablito in the? Yes, Pablito's here. Okay, Pablito. How do you usually build your lesson plan? Do you test your plans in game before a lesson or just imagine the flow? Um, so with Crystal Parts, we have a curriculum. So I really like that because you just know the curriculum's there and you can follow it. But what I do is I usually embellish the curriculum. Or when I make lesson plans for open lessons, what I'll usually do is I'll think about what's the core topic? What am I trying to explore and communicate to my writers? So for example, slants is one of my favorite things to teach, so slant math. So what I start first is I think about what is the core idea of the lesson. In this case, slants, diagonal combs. Usually for people, that's a bit of a brain fudge. I swear. So they're like, what the heck? Like, I always worked on straight lines. Now we're doing diagonal lines. My brain just don't get it. So I would think about how do you convey slants to your writers? And I start from that core question, and then I start to branch out from there. So what you could do is you could do like a mind map situation, like in Canva or just like on a piece of paper or like your tablet, kind of like what is your core concept? So in this case, slants. And then what do you need to teach from there? So one of the big things with slants is your 4 basic slant moves. So your port slant, back slant, fish, and ribbon. Explain those to your writers. What are the different ways you explain them, the different analogies? Can you draw out diagrams for them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? How can you relate that back to arena lines and like your corner letters? So like K, F, M, and H. And then from there, once they understand those, start talking about slant alignment. How do you align to your lead writer while in a slant? Because your brain goes, it's not the same. I'm on a diagonal line, but it actually is. It is the same. You just got to think about things diagonally now. So slant alignment. And then once they're comfortable with slant alignment and the 4 basic slants, then you can introduce in slant math. So what are the different ways you can teach slant math? So there's 2 main methods that I've come up on. There's the pizza pie diagram method, which is where you have 8 slices, and then each slant move is so many slices of your pizza, and then your 4 straight moves, which is your comb, your curl over, your keyhole, your curl. They are also part of that pie. Oh, that's very nice of you, Kat. Um, so that's the pizza pie method, and they can like make a physical diagram to work with. Or the other method is counting like your walls as you're turning or your corners. So you can teach both of those. And actually, I learned the pizza pie method because previously I had only taught counting walls and corners, and that always worked. People always got it. But then I finally encountered a writer who did not get that method. So then I went and I asked some of my other instructor friends, I was like, please help me out. And then Beck, who is the greatest, she was previously a teacher or an early childhood educator. She's like, hey, you could actually use this pizza pie method that we use when we're teaching children how to do fractions. And it worked wonderfully for this one person who I could not teach them the other way. That was just not making sense. First, they learned the pizza pie method, and then counting the walls and the corners, the corner letters made sense for them after that. So when I'm thinking about a lesson plan, I'm thinking about what is the core concept I want to teach? What are all the things that need to be taught and in what order? Does that make sense? So you, Cami asked here, just imagine the flow. I guess I am imagining the flow. I'm thinking about what makes sense in what order to teach. And also too, like when you make a routine, the first time you teach something, it will likely not survive contact with your writers. There's something that will not make sense. Maybe you won't explain it the right way. And then this is just a chance for you to refine your explanation or your lesson plan for next time. So each time that you teach this topic or you use this lesson plan, you'll see where you can add in new ways to explain. Or maybe you reorganize the order in which you explain things for next time. So yeah, I don't know if that's helpful. I don't test my plans in game. I haven't had that to do. I haven't had to do that a long time because I've been teaching for so long. But when I first started instructing and I was teaching myself the SSD dictionary, I would definitely test stuff in game. So I'd be looking at the SSD dictionary, I'd be like, what are they saying when they're saying the definition of this move is this? There's no diagram. Like what? So I would go in the arena and I would think about, okay, they're saying you're doing this, like say a curl over this way, and then from here you're doing a fish. What? And I would actually like be in the arena and trying to make sure that I was going to teach this thing properly. So I would test stuff in game when I was first instructing. I don't need to do it anymore, but yeah. Che, I think their question ties into the stuff on the left. Make your lessons interesting and not bland or stale. So let me just do a brief recap. Your instructing voice, your personality as an instructor. This is something you build up over time. The second thing is, can you start, like, depending on your group, you'll know what their aptitude level is. Can you start with something like more basic or simple, and then you build on that as you go further, and then you'll see where your writers are at. Can you challenge them? Can you challenge them? Can you challenge them? Can you challenge them? Don't be afraid to combine concepts together. So the pirates know I do this a lot. We'll be doing something, and then I'll give a little evil chuckle, and they'll be like, "Oh no, Felix." I'm like, "What if we put this and this together? Let's try that." And they're like, "Absolutely not." I'm like, "We are going to do it." And then we do it, and it's a total disaster. It looks really great. So don't be like afraid to combine two things together and see what happens. So that's another thing. Um, and then just like set your expectations from the beginning with your riders. Uh, like we're going to yap for the first 10 minutes, catch up with each other, and then we're going to lock in and kind of focus on dressage. Like there's some other things you can do here. It's like if you need to go AFK, please go into global or go in the stands so that you're not like in the middle of the arena potentially distracting the other people. How can you reduce the amount of distractions if you're at practice? Like put your phone somewhere else, turn off your pings, ask your younger sibling to please not run in and yell when you're trying to focus on your Pixel Pony game, all that fun stuff. Um, yeah, and just making your lessons interesting is just over time you develop the skill. Just yap 100 kilometers a minute, full send. Um, Yeah, sorry, gang. I can't be distracted playing ponies. I agree, cat. Too important. My partner will come home from work and he's just sitting at my desk yapping. He's like, ah, you're on your horse game again. I'm like, I am. Okay. Well, these are the questions y'all had ahead of time. But if anybody has questions now, after I've yapped or do we have questions now? Or have you thought of something in between the beginning of the clinic and now? I also understand if it's very late and your brain just doesn't want to work. That's also fair. If you think of a question between now and tomorrow, a week from now, a year from now, you can DM me and I'll do my best to answer. Yeah, go lay in your comfy bed wheel. Yeah. Um, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm glad it was helpful. I know I kind of like went over like really basic stuff at the beginning, but sometimes People think of the basics in different ways. I will try. I think have I done I've done a clinic about lesson plans and curriculums before, but maybe I'll do like a more in-depth lesson plan one and then a more in-depth one about how to make your lessons interesting. Maybe I'll do that. I have a list. Oh, what did you guys put in the crystal pirates closer? I'm scared. I'm scared. Is it a chicken butt? Yeah, those are for toilet. Don't send them to me. All right, well, y'all are free to go. Thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, uh, Blitz, I agree. It is always great to see other perspectives. This is why I love so much going to other people's open lessons, or clinics, because everybody thinks about dressage in their own unique way, and you never know what that can unlock for you. It's like the galaxy brain meme. It's like each time you attend 5 more open lessons, you unlock the next level of the galaxy brain meme. Yeah, yeah, for sure. All right, well, have a lovely evening, y'all. Thank you for staying up late. It's only 8 o'clock for me because I'm Pacific, but I know for some of you it's almost, well, it's 11, right? It's 11 o'clock. Or if you're in Europe, it's even later. It's like 6 a.m. That's early. It's early. Are you in Australia, New Zealand, Rio? You're tomorrow. It's tomorrow. It's tomorrow for you. All right, well, have a lovely evening, afternoon, rest of your day, wherever you are. Happy time zone.